All right, just saw F9. I have thoughts, I have notes, I have spoilers. This is my first review on this new channel that I'm starting. I believe what I'm going to do for my reviews, if you can even call it that, I don't know that I would, but I'm going to say my quick, non-spoilery thoughts at the very beginning, and then get into spoiler stuff later on. I don't really feel like I need to do 2 videos for every movie that I go see. So, my quick non-spoilery thoughts. I'm very glad that I watched all the films again. I had only seen each one once. And there's a lot of callbacks and references and things like that. I'm sure I missed a lot because I've only seen each one twice now. But I feel like I would have probably been more lost if I hadn't rewatched the films. That said, I feel like this is more a sequel to 1 and 4, more so than 5, 6, 7, 8. So again, if you're one of those people that just watches each one as it comes out and you don't go back and rewatch them, you might want to rewatch 1 and 4. I would say, and maybe 3, 1, 3, 4. Well, I'll get into it more. But I feel like the heart of the story comes from 1 and 4. More 1 than anything else. But a lot of the characters come from the later movies. So there are still characters from 5, 6, 7, 8. But there are characters that haven't been seen since 3. I'll just say that. That are in this. So maybe revisit that one also. I just did a video about, how we got from street racing to these crazy things that we're doing. This one still seems like a leap for me, though. Even though I see the gradual progress, there's not a lot of driving in this movie. And even though some of the scenes that have driving, it's like there's a whole scene, a whole driving scene where Dom doesn't drive. And again, I'll get into more details in that later, but it's just I don't know. It's different. I would say it's different. I would say it's more like, I guess more like 7 and 8 in terms of what we see, and less like it's not very much like 5. Like 5 is a lot of driving, a lot of chases and stuff like that. There are chases in this. I don't know. It's hard for me to elaborate why I think that. I enjoyed it. I was a little surprised by the inclusion of some things and the lack of some things. I probably will be seeing it again. So I think, let me check my notes. I think that's all I want to say up top. I guess last thing I'll say, this isn't really important, but some of these films have weird cameos. Like Iggy Azalea is often mentioned as one of the stranger cameos. This one has Cardi B in it. And I barely know Cardi B. Like, I was surprised that I recognized her, and I wasn't sure it was her. But in the scene, like, it's one of those things where, it's someone that he knew in the past. And if you, haven't seen all the films, or if you haven't seen them in a while, it might seem like it's supposed to be someone you know. And I think the only reason that I wasn't really confused is because I'm pretty sure that's Cardi B. And, I feel like I would have known if she was in the previous one. So, if you're watching it and you're like, am I supposed to know who this is? I don't know who this is. If it's Cardi B, you're good. It's just a cameo. So, I think that's where I will stop the non-spoiler section, and I will get into spoilers. So if you don't want to hear any spoilers, end it now. Feel free to come back and watch the rest of this later. But that is your spoiler warning. From here on out, everything's fair game. I've got a bunch of random notes. Not only did I write them just as I thought of them, but then I also didn't write them in order. Like, not even the order that I thought of them. So there's absolutely no order to this. We're just going down my page. Stasiak is back. The FBI agent Stasiak, who was in 4 and 5, who kept getting his nose broken by Brian, he's back in this film doing a favor for Toretto, and his nose is just so messed up, and I love it. It's such a great callback. Um, I I was listening to on the EW's podcast that they did for this binge the Fast Saga. They talked with director Justin Lin about how much he loves to beat up that actor. I forget Wiggum, something Shea Wiggum maybe. But apparently the director just likes to have him look beat up. So Brian beats him up, breaks his nose twice, once in 4 and once in 5. And so in this one, his nose is just all busted and beat up. I thought that was, if you haven't gone back and watched the previous ones, you might see that and be like, why did they have someone with such a messed up nose? It's a reference. I liked that. I can't read my own writing. Okay, so early on, they get this video from Mr. Nobody, and like Ramsey and Tej have both seen it and looked over it and combed through the data, and then they come and they bring it to Dom to look over. And Dom is just like playing around with it. And somehow, through Dom magic, sees this cross pendant in the background, so he knows that Jacob, his brother, is involved. But I'm just like, how did Tej and Ramsey not see that, right? With how much they must have done, going through all the information that they could with that video, if they had seen that, they would have recognized it as Dom's, and they would have said something. So it reminds me a lot of Dom's, Batman Arkham video game moment from 4, I believe, Fast and Furious, where he goes to the scene of Letty's death and he just can magically put all these things together, which he wasn't accurate with, as we found out later in 6. But it's just like these tech experts who have combed through all the data they can on this video, they missed something that Dom found just kind of playing around with it. Things like that bother me. They shouldn't, but they do. Talked about Cardi B. I liked that it wouldn't have made sense if they hadn't done this. But that doesn't mean that it wasn't a possibility. I liked that they had Letty know who Jacob was. Because in one of the earlier films, I guess it would have been 6, I think, Dom is trying to tell Letty, how they know each other and her memories and stuff like that. And he says that they'd known each other since they were 15, or at least since he was 15, and he's clearly supposed to be older than 15. And there's a lot of flashback sequences in this to the day that Dom's dad died. So when they meet up with Jacob later, she knows who it is. And I thought, if someone hadn't have been keeping track of the storyline of everything, someone might have assumed that Letty and Dom met when they were adults, and therefore Letty might not know who Jacob is. So I like that, that stayed consistent. She knows who he is. Same with Mia. I thought they might do it some like weird brother that she never knew about or something like that. Or it's pretty unclear how much younger she is than Dom. And so, they could have done something where particularly if Jacob was older than Dom, where Jacob might have been gone before Mia was old enough to remember. So I like that they didn't do any of that stuff. It was a reveal to us, the audience, but it wasn't a reveal to, Dom's family that he's had that long. So, I just appreciated that. Dom's dad's name is Jack Toretto. Now, maybe they mentioned that before, but that's the name of Mia and Brian's son, is Jack. So maybe they've mentioned before that it was like after Mia's dad. I don't remember them saying that before, but I haven't been looking for it. But when it said, it says his name on the car. When it says Jack Toretto, I'm just like, that's Brian's son's name, Brian and Mia's son's name. So that was, if they hadn't said that before, I thought that was clever here. If they did it before, then it would have been clever before. Cypher is in this movie. She's captured by the people that Jacob are working for. And she's kept in this weird, like, Magneto prison, like this glass or plexiglass box surrounded by some sort of electrical, I don't want to say electrical field, but like this field of posts that seem like they'll give an electric shock to anyone who comes in it. And it's just like this 3 foot by 5 foot box And then there's nothing in it, and I'm just like, she has a different change of clothes later in the movie in the same box. There's no toilet there. I'm like, what? Who designed this prison? Because clearly, what we see on screen does not make sense as a prison. Again, I don't know why these are the things that bother me. These are just the things that I notice. Mr. Nobody is barely in this movie. Kurt Russell probably did it while on the toilet in the bathroom one day. It's just one quick video. I guess there is some flashback stuff with him and Han, so I guess there's more in that. But Kurt Russell probably got all his stuff done in a day. So I wasn't sure if he was in this one or not. Retroactively, they say that he has been working with Han, or he had been working with Han, and so they faked Han's death. So everyone was asking, like, how did he survive that explosion? Because he wasn't really hurt when we saw him hurt. He was just pretending to look hurt so that Deckard would see him and assume he was hurt and not escape. There was no great way for them to do this, right? If you said that he was hurt, but he just escaped, that would have felt cheap. If you said that the explosion wasn't real, that would have felt... So, like, there's no great way for them to do this. So, fine. He says that nobody knew ahead of time. Mr. Nobody, not nobody, but Mr. Nobody knew ahead of time that Deckard was after him. I wish they would have included a line about they reinforced his car or something, because he they were anticipating that. And then it would be easier for me to swallow that, he wasn't actually that injured, because his car flipped multiple times, right? So the idea that he's just faking being injured, but actually he's totally fine, like, that's weird. Whereas if he had said, like, we modified my car so that it could take a hit, or maybe, so that it would crumple more, so it would look more damaged than it was. Something like that doesn't make sense, but I would have bought it in this world. So that's, I guess, my headcanon, is that they modified his car to help sell the performance. Han also mentions that Giselle is dead. Now, obviously, that's what we're supposed to believe, since Fast and Furious 6. But I don't think they ever actually said that she was dead. We never see a funeral for her. The only one we had a funeral for was Han. And, all that happened to her was that she fell on the runway. But that happened to Owen Shaw, too, and he survived. So I thought she might come back in this movie, or maybe later on. Now, my only other thought with this is that Han says she's dead. But nobody's been talking to Han because they thought he was dead. So maybe she is still alive and the crew knows it. Or maybe they don't know it. But maybe the crew knows it. But Han doesn't know it because he, wasn't getting the updates. So maybe she's still alive. But this is the first time I think that they've said that she died. Because even in Fast and Furious 6... Mia asks Han, she's like, where's Giselle? And he doesn't say anything. He just, he's just standing there, like, in shock until they hug him. And it's heavily implied that she's dead. But I don't think it was ever confirmed. Although, clearly in this series, even when the deaths are confirmed, that doesn't mean that they're real. What else do I have? Earl and Sean. So Sean from 3. Earl is the name of the other return. So there's... From Tokyo Drift, obviously Han's back. Sean is back, who was the main character of 3. Twinkie, Bow Wow came back, although he's not going... The Bow Wow is apparently not going by Bow Wow anymore. I forgot what his real name is, but he's credited by his real name, or at least a real sounding name. And they make a joke in the film, they call him Twinkie, and they're like, Twinkie? And he's like, I don't go by that anymore. And they're like, you went by that ever? So that, to me, feels like a joke at Bow Wow's expense for going by Bow Wow. So Han, Sean, Bow Wow, or I should say Twinkie. And then there's another guy who was in Tokyo Drift, and I can't remember when I mentioned this. I did a video about Better Luck Tomorrow that I haven't posted yet. And I'm not sure if I will. But in that film, which is unofficially Han's origin, Han has a cousin... named Virgil. And that actor also returns with Sung Kang, who plays Han in Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift. And it's never said that he's his cousin. I don't think his name is ever said in the movie, but apparently he's credited as Earl. So it's never said in Tokyo Drift that he's his cousin, but he's almost always with Han. He's like one of his like crew. And so I talk in another video that I may or may not have posted that it's unclear whether he's supposed to be the same character, because Han is supposed to be the same character, but this other guy, it's the same actor, but I don't think it's the same character. But all of that, not really relevant to my point. Sean and Earl are both now pilots. They can just fly a plane, which Tokyo Drift technically takes place in 2014-ish, and this movie was supposed to come out last year, so that's still 5 or 6 years. I guess you can learn how to fly a plane, but they were both in high school in 2014, quote unquote. I don't know how old you have to be to get a pilot's license, but the fact that was just nonchalantly like, yeah, they can fly a plane. Like, they don't even say it. They're just on screen flying a plane. That caught me off guard. That was a little hard to swallow. You know, the flying car, I buy more than the fact that Sean and Earl are pilots now. My next note just says, magnets, how do they work? So there's a lot to do with magnets in this movie. Both pulling things in and pushing things out. For the most part, you know, it's like a turn your brain off. It looks cool. It makes for cool scenes. And I enjoyed it. But there are just specific scenes where they just crank up the juice and they'll pull a car like through a building into their car. But none of the cars that they're driving by on the street in that particular moment are affected. Like, there are scenes where it shows cars being, because that's what they want to show. But when the focus is on this one car getting pulled, if you pay attention, none of the cars that they're driving past are affected at all. And also, they're in this truck, right? The magnets are in this truck. If you cranked, I feel like if you cranked up the power so much, such that a full-size vehicle could be pulled from through a building, pulled all the way through the building and into your truck, the truck would crumple itself. Because the components of the truck would also be attracted to that. So if you got enough juice to pull a car through a building, I don't think that truck's going to survive that. And like the car crashes through the truck, but I feel like that truck is going to collapse in on itself. So that was just, it's another nitpicky thing. The magnets are cool. I like the magnets. But just there's a couple times in there where I'm just like, that doesn't make sense. That's not how magnets work. What else do I have? Cypher Cell, Giselle dead. I think the only thing I have left is Brian. So I had seen, I don't want to say rumors, but speculation that they might bring Brian back in this, using methods that they used in 7, using his brothers and CGI and stuff like that. And I'm glad that they didn't, but they do at the very end. Brian comes and joins the family barbecue. You just don't see him. You see his car pull up and pull into the driveway. They say that he's on his way, and then you see the car pull up, and then it cuts out. So, you know, if you're gonna do something where you want to say that he, you know, he's still involved, which I was a little confused at the end scene, because it states earlier on that Brian, Dom's son, is with Brian during the events of the movie. Brian is who's watching all the kids, because Mia joins the crew. But at that end scene at the barbecue, Brian, the son, is with Dom. And I'm like, so that means that Brian was back, right? Or he went and saw Brian? Are they just going to skip over that? So I'm okay with what they did. I kind of like how they did it. I like that they didn't, you know, try to put him in again. That would have felt cheap to me. So I like how they did that. A couple other things I didn't write down, just that are coming to my mind as I'm rambling towards the end here. There's a lot of material from that took place in 1989 when Dom's dad died. And most of it I'm more or less okay with. I kind of wish it wasn't broken up as much. It's more like a Man of Steel style flashback where it just when it's relevant to the plot of the movie, we see another flashback. I think I would have rather had seen most of the chunk at one point, and then there is the point where Dom is having like his near-death out-of-body experience and he kind of sees things in a new way. I'm fine with that, but I feel like we went back, and maybe I'm misremembering, but I feel like we went back 3 or 4 times, and I would have rather just been all one chunk. That said, most of the stuff in the past I was fine with, except, maybe I'm wrong, maybe this is my brain being weird, in one particular scene, when young Dom is confronting the driver who was involved with his father's death, it seems like they dubbed Vin Diesel's voice in. Because we hear that actor talk before that point in the movie, and after that point in the movie, and only in that scene does he sound like Vin Diesel. And, you know, Vin Diesel's got a whole side career about voice acting, Groot and the Iron Giant and things like that. And I think they dubbed his voice in. And the at first he just says one word. I think he says leave. And that's when I noticed it. And then I was like, okay, if that's it and then it's back, I'll be okay with it. Because it's like, this is him like becoming this new person, right? But they did it the rest of the scene. And it just didn't quite click with me. And then I think later on they show that character again played, with the normal voice of the normal actor. So that's what I think happened. I don't know that happened. I haven't seen anything confirming that. That's just how it came across to me. That's how I processed it. Didn't love that. Didn't like how that felt. But that's a pretty small nitpick overall. I mentioned earlier, so the scene where they're in London, I think it's in London, where Ramsey drives for the first time. Dom gets in the truck at one point, and they're chasing Jacob, and she's already said that, A, she doesn't know how to drive, B, she's been crashing into everything in her way, and C, it's a big truck, which, is not going to be fast, right? And, every ounce of logic tells you Dom's going to tell her to move, and he's going to drive, because he's the only one that can keep up with him in this truck, right? No, he's just go, keep driving. It was absolutely bonkers that he didn't take the wheel there. And the fact that she then, still maintained and did a good job, and then he tells her later, "You're natural." That blew my mind. In not a good way. So I think that's all my thoughts. I'm going to pause and have a think, and then I'll come back for my final words. All right, a couple more things I thought of. One, Han has a ward, they called it on Wikipedia. A surrogate daughter is what I would call her. Not sure how I feel about that. Kind of cool, kind of neat, kind of out of nowhere. I feel like, because in the Avengers movies, we're definitely building towards Young Avengers. And I think I'm going to make a video about that at some point. It almost seems like we're building towards a young Fast and Furious crew, because we've got Brian's kids, we've got Dom's son, and now we've got Han's surrogate daughter. I don't know. She was cool. She's a good fighter. She reminded me of another character from another thing. Almost like a Huntress from Birds of Prey, or from the Arrow series. Or even an Anastasia, where, the family gets killed, the child is spared. I feel like there was someone else more in line, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. But yeah, Han's got a daughter now, so there's that. And then, almost forgot the mid-credits scene, Deckard Shaw using literally a human punching bag. Hilarious. Han shows up, and he's like, "I thought I killed you." He doesn't say that. He just has this look on his face. So hopefully they continue that. When the trailers for F9 and the marketing for F9 first hit, the hashtag Justice for Han was a big deal because fans were upset that Deckard was invited into the family. He was at the barbecue, right? And they were like, he killed Han, right? Like, we're just gonna let that go. And now Han's not dead. So the marketing included Justice for Han. And so now we're at the point where Han's not dead, so Deckard didn't kill him, but he thought he did. He tried to. He thought he did. And everybody else still accepted him in, thinking that that happened. So I don't think we've gotten Justice for Han yet. Maybe that's, the post-credit scene, maybe that's setting up something for Fast 10, or maybe a Hobbs and Shaw 2, or maybe a Hobbs and Han, or something like that. Speaking of Hobbs, not in this movie. Apparently, Tyrese said that if The Rock was in this movie, Tyrese was not going to be in this movie. It's still some beef going on there. So that's why I said earlier that it's not really a sequel to 5, 6, 7, 8, because that's very heavily with The Rock and Jason Statham and Luke Owens. Oh, I don't remember his name. Oh, this is going to bother me. Hold on. I was so close. Luke Evans. I said Owens. His character's name is Owen in the movie. Luke Evans. So that's, really the 5 is Hobbs, 6 is Hobbs and Owen, 7 is a little bit of Hobbs and a little bit of Owen and a lot of Deckard, and then 8 has Hobbs and Owen and Deckard, and Owen and Hobbs aren't in this at all. Deckard only at the very end. Their mom is in it, Queenie Shaw, she's in it, but the brothers, Hattie's not in it. I thought maybe she'd pop up from Hobbs and Shaw. She's not in it. But we have Cypher from 8. We have Ramsey, who came in 7, I think. So, we've still got some of these newer characters. But in terms of the story and the plot, it's more coming from the earlier films. I did at one point want to go through each of the films and kind of talk about how they tie in to this one, but this video is already really long, so I don't really want to do that. The biggest thing is all the characters from 3 coming back. Curious why they didn't get the girl that played Neela come back. I don't know anything about the actress or where she's at in life or how she's doing, so maybe they couldn't, but they didn't mention the character even. Although I guess all the people from Tokyo are already there until they meet with Han at the end. Tej and Roman go to see them, and it's not like they knew her, so they wouldn't ask about her, and Sean wouldn't tell them about her. So, I don't know. It's just, you see all these returning characters from 3, except for the girl, right? So, yeah, still a couple questions. I know Vin Diesel has been teasing, because he's been getting a lot of questions lately, and he's been teasing a lot of stuff maybe for F10. People have been asking about Eva Mendes. People have been asking about Giselle. So I'm excited for 10. I don't think I liked this one, A, as much as I was hoping I would, and B, as much as most of the other ones. I think this is on the lower end for me. For a reference, I think Too Fast is my favorite. I think. And then I like Fast 5 a lot also. But there's none of them really that I hate. Alright, there's none. Every time I rewatch these, I'll rewatch all of them. There's none that I'm going to skip. But this one felt pretty weak. It's also really long. It's 2.5 hours long. It's the longest one. But I'm excited for Fast 10. I don't know how long it's going to take. I don't know if we're going to get another spin-off before then. But I'm ready to go. So, that is me rambling for half an hour, holy cow, about F9. Any thoughts, any comments, anything I said wrong that you need to correct me on, go ahead and hit the comments down below. And we'll see you in the next movie. Thank you for watching.